Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Sean Allison. I'm the president and CEO of the Manatee County Family YMCA, whose mission is to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. The two words in that statement that we take so seriously are the last two, for all. And we've made a concerted effort to reach all neighborhoods and areas in Manatee County with partners, with caring volunteers and staff. But this morning we're all gathered here to speak about and respond to the audit that was published on Thursday. And what I want to say about that is our own internal investigation also showed flaws in our documentation and in our paperwork processes. We took steps weeks ago to correct that through staff retraining and also where we could find areas where someone intentionally doctored a document, we terminated their employment. As president and CEO of the YMCA, I take full responsibility for the documentation flaws that may have occurred in our programming. Documents could have been flawed, but what isn't flawed is our character and our commitment to the community. Now, the documentation and the audit, it doesn't show the great success, though, of the Y programs. And we would hope that the county would also include that in their report because we've had tremendous success and we're very proud of the work that we've done. The audit itself will not result in any change in programs. We don't anticipate any funding changes. We don't anticipate any staff reductions. We don't anticipate any service level drops in any programs throughout the Y. What it will result in is a concerted effort to ensure that all of our documentation is correct, that we live by the high standards of our own mission, and that we're above reproach in every area. Also, lastly, as this continues to unwind, I pledge that the Y will be open and cooperate with any entity that wishes to ask questions or investigate us further. So I'm happy also, as the CEO, to serve a board of high integrity individuals, professionals in their own right, in their own fields. And I'm thankful today and honored to introduce to you Joy Brannon, the chair of our board of directors.
Thanks, Sean. My role is as the chair of the board of directors, excuse me, it's just to assure the community that the programs that the citizens of Manatee County paid for occurred, that the communities, the neighborhoods, the children, the families that we were mandated to serve were served and served very effectively. And it's something that the community can be very proud of. That said, I also understand that when we partner with organizations like the county, we have an obligation to keep good paperwork. We have an obligation to live up to the standards in the contract. And as Sean mentioned, in our own internal investigation, as soon as we were made aware that there might be issues, we did our due diligence. We went out and hired a third-party accounting firm to come in and look at some of the documentation, some of the processes, and tell us where we might be missing the mark. And we didn't wait for a county internal audit to be published. We didn't wait for somebody to tell us that there might be an issue. We went out and we found out what the issues were. And as Sean said, we've made real progress and taken firm action steps to address those issues, including the termination of an employee. We, as a board, take our charge seriously to steward the dollars that Manatee County government gives us. We will always take that charge seriously. To the extent that there were errors in documentation and mistakes made with paperwork, and they do not live up to the standards that we're held to under the grant, we will make that right. We understand that that's our obligation. But we really want to make sure that everyone understands that the programs occurred. The children and the families that were affected by these programs were served, and they were served to very great effect. The impact of these programs is unquestioned, even in the report that was released by the internal auditor. So I want to assure you, as citizens of Manatee County, that the Y is doing its job, that the board is on top of this, that we take our charge seriously, and that we will always do right by the citizens of Manatee County.
Thank you, Joey. My name is Sean Arnold. I'm a counsel for the Y Manatee County. Here to echo a few of the words that were stated, but also to let the people know of Manatee County that there are real professionals who are oversight. Mr. Brannon is an accountant by trade. We have bankers, attorneys, and other things like that. The board is looking into the allegations that are set forth, but I want to make it clear that to this point, what we have found has been a documentation issue. The word fraud has been used in from the county to state what happened here. If the board finds evidence that that has occurred, it will take action. But to this point, what we have is a documentation issue. The people can understand that the services to this point, as we understand, were rendered. And also understand that if the board determines that we did not live up to the elements of the grant with fidelity, as we should have, we will give the county their money back, even though we may have already provided the services. That's an extraordinary step that this board is committed to and has already explained to me in the executive committee, and the 17 members of the board will be meeting this week. And I can tell you that, again, the board are all volunteers, and they have devoted so many hours to this project to this point, and will continue to do so, because the reputation of the Y and the integrity of the services that are provided are great. Also understand that they hold the money that's been given to them, whether it be by donors or by the county, in absolute terms. They understand that they're given a sacred purpose, and when they're given $1, to actually use that dollar towards the purpose in which it was given. And if we didn't do it in a way in which the documentation leads up to the point of the contract, the money will be returned even if the services were rendered. That's all I have at this point. If you have any questions, we'll entertain them.
One of the things that they brought out in the report was that some of these services were rendered on off days at school. You're saying all the services were rendered, but according to the report, these services were rendered when there was no school. How do you feel?
Again, this is a circumstance of where you have a contract, okay? A grant is a contract. It says that we will agree to provide services if you do it in a certain way. You can analogize it to anything that you say that we will, if the plumber comes to my house, I will pay you, but I'm only going to pay you if you do it in a certain way. The services were rendered at times when, for instance, one employee is not an hourly employee. They're on the clock 24/7, 365. And what they do is they work with kids at risk. And if that emergency happens on Christmas, if that emergency happens on a Saturday afternoon and it's not at the school and the school's not open, then they were out there providing the services. Now, whether the Y should have been reimbursed for those services because of the contract that they had with the grant, that's a process that we're still undergoing. But when the term fraud is used to talk about how things were billed, we haven't seen any evidence of that to this point. And I can tell you that nobody on the board is going to hold anybody to any lower standard. If we find it, we're going to do something about it.
And we're not talking about a little bit of money. It's $175,000, I think, from what I tell from looking at that. Is that about the figure that you guys?
I think it's less than that, and the audit speaks for itself. Whatever the audit says, it speaks for itself. However, again, the conclusion of the audit, and it's very important to recognize this, is not that the services weren't rendered. The conclusion of the document, it has several different conclusions, and it's a pretty lengthy document. But the conclusion of it was that the documentation may be lacking, and they reached no conclusion as to whether the services are provided. And that's frankly what we're here to talk about today, is that the services were provided.
They're also saying they recommended turning it over to the law enforcement. Are you guys worried about that?
We're going to cooperate with law enforcement or whatever we need to do. Whoever wants to ask questions, as Mr. Brandon and Mr. Allison said, we're going to do that. And again, the board is an independent oversight committee in an entity, and I serve at the pleasure of the board, and the board serves to overlook everybody who was involved here. And everybody from Mr. Allison down is going to be evaluated based on what happened in this instance.
You said that you have already fired one employee. Why was that person fired?
We just found some of the documentation issues that the audit had reflected, and did that prior to the release of the audit, and it was terms for separation and terms for dismissal.
Did you have some examples of what this individual was doing?
I think if you have a copy of the audit, you can see some of those things that were in there.
Did you have an employee with the last name Parrish?
Yes.
Did he use money to go to a wedding and other personal trips?
No.
So that was completely falsified?
Yes.
Were any of your staff members using taxpayer money to go on for personal purposes?
No.
You said that you'd pay back the money to the county. How will that affect the WISE programs or education or any other entity?
Well, as I said in my earlier statement, we don't anticipate any change in the current levels of service that we provide the county as a result of this.
And what would you say to the folks of Manatee County who are going to make judgment on people that you guys are hiring?
Well, this is a community trust issue. We think it's very important that people in Manatee County know that they got their dollars worth for this program. These programs were run not just in schools, but they're run in the streets. They're being run right now in the back of the crowd here. We work with kids. We work with kids in the street, and if it's a holiday, we're working with kids. If it's a weekend, we're working with kids. And so we're flawed in some of our documentation, but what wasn't flawed was the quality of service that we offered.
Is it true on the documentation that employees actually whited out dates and changed dates to make it look like they were working when they weren't?
But that is a similar finding that we had in our own audit, and I'm not prepared to comment on the specifics of our own audit yet because it's not completed. But like I said before, our own audit reflected some of the same findings that the county clerk's audit found, and we took steps to correct that immediately.
And I know you said that you will take responsibility for what happened, but how did this take place for so long without anybody catching on to it?
Well, that's one of the things that we internally are looking at. And I think the county audit gave us great insight as to why some of that could have happened. But having just received the audit 48 hours ago, it'll be the coming days and hopefully not weeks, but it'll be a considerable amount of time for us to go through each and every part of the audit to answer questions like that. The audit did leave a lot of questions for us to answer internally, and we're going to do our due diligence to do that.
Do you believe that other members of your staff will be let go?
I have no way to evaluate that at this time.
And lastly, why was it so important to you to call this meeting on a Saturday?
Oh, well, I felt like the seriousness of the charges deserved an immediate response. I'm sorry if some of you came out on a Saturday, but we did bring pizza. If any of you would like it, you can all share in that. I felt like the seriousness of the charges required an immediate response, that the community needed to hear from their YMCA. You know, their YMCA where over 12,000 people are members. And I think what they saw in the paper was just so out of place for what they experience on a day-to-day basis in our children's programs, in our family programs, in our outreach programs, in our partnerships, that they deserve to hear our response.
Can you tell us your first name and last name?
Sure.
As well as the two gentlemen who spoke?
Again, Sean Allison, SeanAllison.
And your position?
President and CEO, Manatee County Y.
Joey Brannon, JoeyBrannon. I'm the chairman of the board of directors, Manatee County Y.
And again, my name is Sean Arnold, ShawnArnold, and I'm counsel for the Y.
About the money that was in the papers or possibly used for personal reasons, why do you believe that they did not use that for personal reasons?
Well, that's going to be reflected in our own report when it's finalized. Everybody has their job to do, and county clerk's office certainly has a big job. I truly think some of that could have been cleared up had more interviews been conducted.
Some of it looked like a former employee maybe got all this started. I mean, you guys and
Excuse me, I didn't understand that.
former employee, it looked like a former employee kind of got all this started over a year ago. I mean, do you guys wish you would have maybe addressed this internally before it got to this point, or what?
Yeah, when you look at doing a complete audit in a program, that's something we don't do on a regular basis. I mean, that requires putting side by side reports that go back for months and years sometime, and comparing things and so we realize now that that's a very good practice. We tend to do our reporting and file away stuff and then work on the next reporting cycle. But we've recognized, and what I've asked, what I think I've got agreement from the board to do is that all these grants that we do, every 2 years we're going to conduct an audit such as this. And we do it every 2 years because in a 2-year period of time we'll capture actually 3 grant periods. So that costs a lot of money. But we feel like that we are going to get questions answered about fidelity on our own from now on going forward. And so we're going to take that step. You can't really rely on a staff person whose heart is to serve kids, who comes to work every day focused on the needs of children, the needs of families, to do this type of auditing. We have to get professionals to come in and do that, and that's what we're going to do.
Who are the folks who are here today, and you mentioned one of your programs here?
I think they're supporters of the Y, I hope. I see several staff and their families. I see some volunteers, volunteer board of advisor member. I see some former employees. I see some kids that work with our gang program in the back, and yeah. Anything else?
I read in the paper that a couple anonymous folks have been keeping track of what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you know who they are, and did you have
No.
any interaction with them?
We don't give any credence to anonymous emails. I may overstep my bounds a little bit here, but all that is completely false. Those were some very hurtful accusations that were made that someone is posed as having inside knowledge to the workings of my staff, and it described us in 180 degrees out of phase for the type of working relationship that we have, the type of dedication that they have. And so we didn't give any credence to it, try to contact anybody or run it down. Some of those staff people mentioned in those are here today too, I think. So, well, thank you all for coming. On behalf of the Y, its staff, its members, its volunteers, program participants, its board of directors and donors, partners, I appreciate you being here today.